Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. So as promised, I am doing a video right now on the press conference and what we know so far of how the hearing went down. Now, I watched the entire press conference. A lot of it we went over in the indictment since some of it was actually read directly from the indictment. Here's the deal. These are the takeaways. Number one, they are saying they think he's a flight risk. They want him to go under no circumstances. So they're saying we want him held until trial. This is huge news. Let me explain to you why this is huge news. There's a potential, if a judge agrees with this, that regardless of whatever happens in this new trial in New York, that seems to primarily, at least as of what we know so far from this sealed indictment, takes place in New York and Palm Beach and nowhere else. However, like I said, if they keep him, this could go on forever. One of the tools of Jeffrey Epstein is his amazing amount of money to litigate things. So a trial like this could take 2-3 years where he would be on the streets. Obviously, if he's in jail, they're going to try to expedite this. And with a maximum sentence of 45 years, this would be a death sentence. So a judge has agreed after, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein, to almost no one's surprise, pled not guilty today. Afterwards, after he pled not guilty, a judge says he has to stay until Thursday. Thursday is the bail hearing, guys. So this was just a huge, huge news. There's a lot of other developments. We've talked about the fact it has been confirmed that Comey's daughter is actually going to be one of the federal prosecutors in this. And believe me, we're going to be doing video after video of analysis of these events as they unfold. After all, we do know that employees 1, 2, and 3 are named as employees in that indictment as the victims are. And we're going to mostly focus on the question and answer session after we have him just state a couple of things, because that's where we get the meat of our information and how long the Department of Justice and the FBI have been looking into these matters. And I think that that's really some of the more important stuff out there, guys. So without further ado, let's go to Jeffrey Berman, the federal prosecutor in this case. Or I'm sorry, he might be just the New York State prosecutor. Excuse me.
And while the charged conduct is from a number of years ago, it is still profoundly important to the many alleged victims, now young women. They deserve their day in court, and we are proud to be standing up for them by bringing this indictment. Combating sex trafficking and exploitation of children is a priority for this office and for the Department of Justice, as the sexual abuse of a minor can have devastating effects on victims, often lasting for years. That is why my office will not rest until perpetrators of these types of crimes are brought to justice. Victims' voices, including the many voices of Epstein's alleged victims, must be heard. To that end, I want to say to anyone who is watching this or hearing about our prosecution, if you believe you are a victim of this man, Jeffrey Epstein, or you have evidence or information relating to the conduct alleged in the indictment unsealed today, we want to hear from you. Please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI.
So there it is. I want to stop it right there just for a moment.
Charges unsealed today.
Because let's stop it right there. That tells me that there's a possibility of even more charges. Let me repeat that. That tells me there's the possibility of even more charges, because this is an unsealed indictment. We know the FBI has been doing it. These charges are just 2002 to 2005 in between New York and Palm Beach. They are taking at least his mansion. And Owen, by the way, the other big takeaway I didn't tell you about, they found at least hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs, they're revealing, on the raid of his mansion of what appear to be underage girls. So it would appear that on top of all the trafficking charges and the minor charges, that those are going to be new charges. And again, they are demanding that he is a flight risk and he should not be allowed to go until trial. I mean, these are all. Let's all hope. Let's all hope right now.
Reflect the hard work not only of this office, but by our law enforcement partners at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. To my left is Bill Sweeney, the Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office of the FBI, and I wish to thank him and his team for their dedication and professionalism in seeing this investigation through.
I'm going to just bring Sweeney up right now. We don't have to go into all the other stuff. Sweeney talks for a little while. He has some poignant things to say, but we're going to get back to where Jeffrey Berman answers questions, because I think that's the most important part of this. That's where it reveals the most.
Disregard this responsibility, using whatever means they have at their disposal to lure children into a life which they should never have been exposed. As we allege today, Jeffrey Epstein is one of those people. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on Saturday evening, we arrested him at Teterboro Airport without incident. Epstein has been charged with 1 count each of sex trafficking and sex trafficking conspiracy. For at least a 4-year period covering the entirety of 2002 through 2005, he is alleged to have sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls at his homes in New York City and in Palm Beach, Florida.
Now let's just stop it there. Remember, they don't name more than 3 victims in the indictment, but they do talk about dozens. And they talk about victim procurers, and especially the victims that then procured. They go into that in the indictments. Again, if you want to read the indictment, it's on my Twitter. If you want the video, I posted just about an hour ago, maybe a little bit more, on the entire indictment with my analysis.
The girls were recruited in a variety of ways, usually by employees of Epstein and sometimes by fellow victims.
And guys, by the way, just to reiterate this and bring this up, if you look at this here, this is one of the unsealed documents from 2017 where you can see some of his co-conspirators outside of Maxwell. And again, employee 1, 2, and 3 are not named in this, which also gives me more hope that there will be more charges out there, especially with Maxwell, especially with Sarah Kalin, Groff, and Maleshev. If you don't know, if you haven't seen my other videos, if you're not subscribed, first of all, subscribe right now. But we found those people, at least a little bit. And you got to understand, in 2002 or 2010, when they were asking questions about Prince Andrew, and yes, he does get brought up in the press conference, so we'll wait to give you that information. They were given new identities. And for instance, I couldn't find a picture of Natalia, but even in her own bio, she has AKAs. So when they were just being questioned and probably given immunity through these non-prosecution agreements, well, they had their identities changed as well. Leslie Groff, I could barely find anything about her either. So once again, it's just really, really crazy that out of nowhere we get this unsealed document or indictment, and that it seems to be moving forward and expanding. Because also in this indictment, you gotta understand. We'll type it in, and the housekeepers, the butlers, various employees, assistants, associates, wittingly and unwittingly, such underlings performed their respective roles with the purpose of effect of ensuring the enterprise, this is called an enterprise, supplied young females to defendant Epstein and others for sexual purposes. And those others, they've yet to be named. And they also are referred to in the actual indictment. But let's get back to the press conference.
The victims typically received hundreds of dollars in cash. The estimated dozens of victims were as young as 14 years old at time of recruitment. Children who provided Epstein massages while they were nude or partially nude. Children who were asked to engage in direct and indirect sex acts for money. Children who were enticed to do all these things at the hands of a man more than or nearly 3 times their age.
Let's just stop. I'm glad he used the term children. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Those who have been victimized by child sexual predators are frequently haunted by memories of these crimes well into their adulthood, often for the rest of their lives. They bear the burden of someone else's criminal behavior. Too often, adults in our society have turned a blind eye to this type of criminal behavior alleged here. We have seen the excuses, the ignorance of many who didn't even bother to understand that this behavior is a persistent scourge against our society's vulnerable youth, and the willful blindness as to who the real villains are in this type of outrageous crime. The villains are the adult perpetrators, not the children.
Damn straight.
Victims of child sex trafficking come from all walks of life. They are our neighbors, our students, young adults looking for help, vulnerable foster children. The list goes on and on and on. To the victims who may be listening or get word of today's charges, the team standing here before you represents FBI special agents, NYPD detectives, analysts, victim specialists, prosecutors who make it their mission to listen to every individual who's been exploited and to advocate for the most vulnerable among us.
He also gets into how all these people have to volunteer to be a part of this because it's so much. But I want to skip forward and get to the point where he's about to take questions and let you know, because again, these questions are important and they do reveal some pretty big things.
First, let me preface it by saying that there's been a lot of speculation in the media about individuals affiliated or associated with the defendant Jeffrey Epstein. As you know, Justice Department guidelines prohibit us from talking about such individuals. And so I just want to let you know that if that question comes up about any individual, my answer will be no comment, and that will be across the board, no comment. And I urge you not to read anything into that one way or the other. Are there any questions?
Why is it being handled by the Public Corruption Office?
Could you give us any insight into why these charges are not covered by the immunity agreement that Epstein reached with the U.S. Attorney in Florida some years ago?
Yeah.
So let's just stop. He's asking the question whether or not these charges, how they differ from the charges that were brought to him by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Palm Beach, Florida.
Yes, Jeffrey Epstein entered into a non-prosecution agreement with the Southern District of Florida. That agreement only binds, by its terms, only binds the Southern District of Florida. The Southern District of New York is not bound by that agreement and is not a signatory to that agreement.
Mr.
Yes.
Why is it being handled by the Public Corruption Unit if it's just sex trafficking charges at the moment?
Well, I'm not getting into the staffing decisions at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I will say that I have confidence that the Public Corruption Unit can ably handle this investigation prosecution as it has so many other matters. I will again urge you not to read into the unit assignment anything one way or another with respect to the investigation.
Looking at the evidence, how confident are you that Jeffrey Epstein is going to spend the next several decades of his life behind bars?
I love that question. How confident are you that Epstein will spend the rest of his life basically beyond bars? Great question. Bravo. I like that question.
Look, I'm not going to comment right now on the evidence. I will say that we are going to request detention pending the trial in this case.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I was just wondering, in reading this indictment, as someone has already asked, wasn't the activities alleged in this indictment already on the Department of Justice's radar way back in 2008 when Miami's U.S. Attorney General Alexander Acosta, now Secretary of Labor, brokered a state plea bargain? Why is there no accounting for the very robust participation of DOJ at the time?
All right, so let's stop. He's asking about why there's no accounting for Acosta. And we're going to go into this later on, but there is a new story out there that says Trump's labor secretary Acosta at the center of the Epstein scandal after agreeing to the sweetheart deal as a new federal prosecution is brought into the corruption unit. And remember, this is something that we have covered again and again. There's Acosta being grilled by, I forget her name. She wasn't as good as Clark. She tore him apart. But we've been into that non-prosecution agreement. Again, if you're catching up, if you don't know all the ins and outs of this trial, over the last few months in my personal channel, I have done so much work regarding Dershowitz, Epstein, and others. It's all available over here at my page, so make sure that you are subbed, you're a member of the Burmis Brigade, you are sharing this stuff, and we're going to continue on with these questions because he's about to answer. He's like, well, is there going to be an accounting for Acosta? That's a good question, but perhaps, again, we know that the Maria Farmer allegations go back as far as 1995. Think about that. That predates all of the stuff that came out in Florida, and it's her resurfacing. And with these unsealed documents, we've seen that It appears that Virginia Roberts met with the FBI in Australia at a U.S. consulate and gave them verifiable information. Again, if you believe these unsealed allegations that we're beginning to see. So let's continue with this press conference.
New information that you have or new evidence?
I'm not going into any dealings with Maine Justice, nor am I going to go into any aspects of how our investigation originated. I will say that we were assisted from some excellent investigative journalism.
I love that. Let's stop that. Do you see that? I would like to say that we were assisted in some excellent investigative journalism. And I would hope that that journalism that they're referring to, I think it would be big-headed to just say the alternative media. I'd like to say that we at least put it on the radar of a lot of people, but especially the Miami Herald. Again, from what I've seen, from what they've said, they contacted over 80-plus victims of this man just in the last couple of years. And I did a video on that. You can watch them at it was some kind of a conference giving a speech on basically how journalism is dying, and they're one of the few people actually doing investigative journalism. So it can make a difference. There are good people in the FBI, in the DOJ, in the government. They're not all pig demons. I promise you that.
The FBI tried to get him years ago the first time. How important was it to get back at this, to try and bring charges against him again, given everything that transpired?
How important was it to get back after that failure, he basically says, from years ago?
I wouldn't comment on getting back at anybody or anything. That's not the way we work. We work with facts. When the facts presented themselves, as Mr. Berman hinted at through investigative journalist work, we moved on it.
Mr. Sweeney, you use
Love it.
You use the expression willful blindness. Is any of that directed at the government or investigators who handled this the first time around?
Now, he's asking about willful compliance. And again, when we're talking about willful compliance, if you saw my Jane Doe document, I would think it's directed more about Epstein's cohorts, his women pimps, and his associates that were around him. The butlers, the maids, the assistants, the secretaries, the people making flight plans, the people named as co-defendants in Jane Doe 43's case. Now, he's asking if that actually extends to possibly the investigation and the deals cut. So is he alluding to Alex Acosta? That's a possibility, but I don't know for sure.
No, I'm talking about society in the whole. We've seen sex trafficking cases all over the place. It's a very busy task force, and my opinion is often in society we ignore it, and we ignore the vulnerable victims.
Saturday night, you guys executed a search warrant for Mr. Epstein's evidence. There were cameras that show your agency.
Yes, contemporaneous with the arrest of Epstein at Teterboro Airport, agents executed a search warrant on his mansion in New York City and recovered and seized, and that was a search pursuant to a valid warrant. Agents seized evidence, including nude photographs of what appeared to be underage girls.
And again, the media is reporting in the hundreds or perhaps thousands. So you got to ask yourself again, now, on top of those CP charges that are probably going to come his way, did he produce any of them? Well, then you have the production, and then were they shared at all? And were they shared with their assistants? I hope that this is just the beginning of the case, that there are more sealed indictments, that more charges will be brought as these warrants are executed. And at the very least, they say they're taking his $77 million New York mansion, which could hide and hold Lord knows what. So let's continue.
Yes.
Prince Andrew was a witness to see if he could provide you any information.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Prince Andrew of the British royal family.
He asked about Prince Andrew.
Information. Yeah, he was a long-standing friend of Mr.
No comment.
So let's stop it there. Just to be clear, that was the question there where he asked if Prince Andrew had provided any information. Remember, in the beginning he said, listen, don't take it one way or another. So he asked about a specific person, whether they were providing information. He said no comment.
The decision to arrest him on Saturday, is there a reason for that? Was something concerning you that you needed to?
So basically right now he's like, why Saturday? Did something concern you? And he's like, he's going to tell him, no, it's because he was abroad and we were going to execute the search warrant, so it made sense when he came in to New Jersey next to New York City.
He flew into the jurisdiction, and so we arrested him.
Is there any overlap between the victim stated in the non-prosecution agreement or in the investigative journalism investigation?
I have no comment with respect to the alleged victims. Yes.
Multiple homes, multiple aircraft, what kind of flight risk does he represent?
We think he's a significant flight risk, and that is why we are seeking detention pending trial. He has enormous wealth. The charges are very serious, and they carry with them a maximum sentence of 45 years in jail, which to someone of Epstein's age is basically a life sentence. So we think he has every incentive to try and flee the jurisdiction. And when you have 2 planes and you live much of the year abroad, we think that's a very real risk.
Yeah, and let's stop. So once again, this is huge news. So we know until the bail hearing on Thursday, they are going to hold him. Thank God. But if they hold him, he can't play the run-in game because he's already in jail. So waiting for the trial itself, guys, think about this. Waiting for the trial itself, he could serve more time than he did at his country club resort where he was allowed to leave during the day. Think about that. That's huge. That's a start. But if we are able to give this guy a life sentence, if we're able to prosecute the other pimps around him and the high-level elitist customers and start busting this ring of elitists that are in our government, that are in the entertainment industry, that are in the corporate industry, that are in the art world, that are in the music world, etc., we can break this down. We can shine light on the darkness, and we can have huge victories that we've never imagined possible before.
Epstein a billionaire?
No comment.
So she just asked right there, I believe, is Jeffrey Epstein a billionaire? And I think I'm going to do an entirely separate video about this article by Forbes. But right down here, he repeats, Jeffrey Epstein is not an actual billionaire. Where is it? Not a billionaire. So right there. We're going to go in depth into this article, whether this is, PR, this is spin, this is people trying to cover their tracks. Most of his money came from, basically accounts on his offshore island, and nobody knows who his client list is other than Les Wexner, who we've covered at length in past videos.
Are underage. You referred to some of them as particularly vulnerable. Why is that the case? Can you elaborate?
I can't go into the specifics with respect to any particular victim.
You said in the indictment there are 3 employees that are named. Why weren't they charged, and you provide an explainer about that?
So here's the question. He's asking about the 3 employees, employee 1, employee 2, and employee 3, and asking why they were not charged.
Their role and whether they're cooperating or why they're charged.
Are they cooperating?
No comment.
No comment.
This is obviously a massive investigation. How do you compare this to other sex trafficking cases you've prosecuted in the past?
Well, it's extremely significant because of the number of years and the number of victims. There are dozens of victims as alleged in the indictment in New York and dozens in Florida, and it maintained itself over several years. So this is very significant. Our office has handled this year, in fact, many significant sex trafficking cases, and this is one of them.
Many significant? I would say that this is probably the premier case, although, you know what else he's referring to? NXIVM. And I've done a lot of work on NXIVM. We're just going to go over there real quick, guys. Again, if you're not subbed, now's the time to sub. There's a lot of NXIVM stuff over here. Guys, there's got to be, I think, over a dozen videos regarding NXIVM, all the way through exposing the Bronfmans, Salinas, Cafritz, and so many others that were intertwined in this ring. So make sure that you're subbed. Go check out the NXIVM stuff because, listen, Bronfman got a sweetheart deal. Not as much of a sweetheart deal as Epstein did, but she got a sweetheart deal. Let's make that clear. She got 21 to 72 months. If she gets more than 27, she gets to appeal that, and it's $6 million fine. That's a pittance for what she's been accused of. So let's just go back to these questions right here, and it's almost wrapping up, guys.
Where did he find these women, and how is he luring them to his mansion or his house?
Well, as alleged in the indictment, these individuals, the underage girls were sometimes recruited by current victims. and the current victims were given cash payments if they could bring other underage girls to be similarly abused. And that's how he continued to expand the number of new victims that he had, and that's how it was able to maintain itself over several years.
That's the expansion. And you know what, guys? I think that's about where I'm going to end this video. I want to thank all of you guys for supporting me, for growing with me. Remember when we hit 25K, we're going to do the 25K AMA on the road to 30K. Once we get to 30K, we're going to be able to do a lot more with this channel. And guys, thank you all for the support through my GoFundMe. Remember, I'm not giving you any bullshit. It's not about left or right. It's always about right and wrong. I'm not going to promise you anything. What I am going to promise you is 30 to 50 videos on real subjects, from Assange to DARPA to Syria to Iran to the quote-unquote New World Order, Epstein, Nexium, and more. Biometrics, facial recognition, privacy concerns, all that stuff. And I'm doing it with your support. $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year. If I can maintain it, I get to keep about 40 of that. It keeps a roof on my head, and it keeps me reporting the truth for you guys 7 days a week. And if you can't do that, that's fine. Just make sure you sub, you share, and you support the Burmese Brigade, and you support truth. Thank you guys so much. I'll be back with more Epstein later today. I'll see you on the flip side.